Hello everybody, this is Tebogo Thomas Ramakgwagwa. I am an alumni of the University of Pretoria. Go Tuckies! Yes, and I am also the co-founder of the SBK Leadership Academy. You guys are watching the third video, the debrief on the topic of servanthood, or as I like to call it, servant leadership. Right, we've covered what it looks like. We've covered the definition, the way that the leader should speak, their heart behind leadership. We've spoken even about how it should look like in practice. All right, now we're going to dive deeper by looking at examples that have come before us. I think the best way we can honestly learn is to learn from people that have given us an example. All right, so the first person that comes to my mind when I think of servant leadership is His Excellency, our former president of the Democratic Republic of South Africa, Nelson Mandela. The reason why he comes to my mind when I think of servant leadership is because he literally laid his life down, guys. He went to prison to go fight for a vision, right? A vision that he had, a dream that he had in his heart and in his mind for a better South Africa, where everyone was afforded equal opportunity, regardless of the color of their skin, right? And he spent half of his life, half of his adult life in prison because of this vision, right? For me, that is servant leadership. I mean, he had opportunities where he could have, decided, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to preserve myself and my family. But because he is such an example of servant leadership, he had that sacrificial mindset, that sacrificial heart, where the country is bigger than just him as an individual. Obviously, there were many other leaders involved in the struggle, but he exemplifies servant leadership for me in the way that he was sacrificial for the purpose and for the benefit of others. And he believed in the vision that he had, which is another characteristic trait of a servant leader. They have vision, and that vision drives them forward. The second example that comes to my mind when I think of servant leadership is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in America, who led the civil rights movement. So for those who don't know what it is, go check it out, guys. Research. This is really important history in human race, really. Right. So he fought for the rights. Again, something similar to South Africa. Simple rights, equal rights for all people, regardless of their skin color. Right. And he even got assassinated for it. So this, for me, again, shows the sacrificial nature of a servant leader. How one person is willing to deny themselves certain things in order to move the entire society forward. And I really hope for us to get to a better place. I really hope that one of you watching this video catches the heart of that, because it's going to take a Martin Luther King, it's going to take a Nelson Mandela for us to move forward as a society. And you guys are the solutions. You guys are the dreamers that we need activated in order to move the nation forward. The last example that comes to my mind, being a Christian, is the example of Jesus Christ. Now in the scriptures, we see an instance before he dies where he washes the feet of his disciples. Now, let me give you guys a bit of context. The people who washed feet in that time were the lowest of lowest servants, right? People who worked for others, right? We spoke about that word in the first video. There were levels to servanthood, right? There were people who served in the palace. There were people who served, in the kitchen, so on and so forth. The ones who washed feet were literally the lowest. So for Jesus to do this, you need to understand what a picture of servanthood this was. And in his words, he said that you guys need to do this for one another. Now, he's not necessarily implying that we all wash each other's feet. I don't think that was the point of it. The point is that if you guys want to be like me, you need to have this attitude. You need to have this heart posture to serve one another, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's quote unquote beneath you. If we are going to make an impact in the future, we need to be the types of people that see ourselves doing things like this in order to benefit the community at large. All right, guys, now that I've gone through a few examples, and there are many examples of people that have exemplified servant leadership for all of us to learn from, we are going to go through the characteristics again, but this time more in depth, more in discussion. So when you guys leave here, you can have an understanding of how it looks like practically to practice these traits. A characteristic is something that you guys can learn. Yes, it comes more naturally to other people, but like anything else in life, really, the more you practice it, the better you become at it. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is characteristic trait number 1, a servant leader's ability to listen actively, right? So, have you ever been in a situation where you were speaking to someone and you could obviously tell they weren't listening, right? It's frustrating, right? So a servant leader has this ability, especially when a problem is presented before them, to listen, to understand, and not listen to just respond. There's a difference, right? To listen to respond is to listen to give an answer without really catching the heart of what somebody is saying. Whereas a servant leader goes beyond what is just being said, but what is being meant from the heart and addresses that. So we need to be, if we're going to be effective servant leaders, people who listen to understand. And that's how we can effectively and most effectively solve the problems that are presented to us. Right, the next thing is a servant leader's ability to have empathy or practice empathy, right? This is servant leader trait number 3. I'm not going to go through all of them for time's sake. Now, empathy, in my opinion, is the ability to put yourself into somebody else's shoes, right? And make a decision that will benefit not just you, but also benefit them. We need to be empathetic people, right? We need to be people that practice empathy, that lead from our hearts, right? I love this quote that I heard from an anonymous person once. They said, we need to be, yes, it was actually Dr. Martin Luther King who said it. He said, we need to be the type of leaders that lead from a place of a strong mind, but a soft heart. And that's what empathy in practice looks like. We lead from a place of absolute hard on processes, but soft on people. We need to be those type of people. Because ultimately, we're not working with machines. We're working with people who have feelings. And feelings are valid. Whether the person is wrong or right, it doesn't matter. Their feeling is valid. Yes, some feelings are not justified, but it's a feeling nonetheless. I always say to the kids in the Leadership Academy, there's no such thing as a right feeling or a wrong feeling. There's just things as such as right or wrong motives in why an action is being done. Right. I could go deeper into why empathy is important as a servant leader, but I'm going to stop there. Right. Another servant leadership or servant leader character trait that I feel is super important to discuss is the ability to have a vision. As a leader, a servant leader, you cannot take people where you have never been, or at least where you have never been in your heart. Nelson Mandela practiced this ability to have a vision, where he had a vision of a free, democratic South Africa, but he had not experienced it yet. Because he had seen this place in his heart, he could take people, he could lead the nation exactly where he wanted us to go. Same thing with Dr. Martin Luther King. In fact, it's quoted in his very famous speech, "I have a dream." He could not vocalize or lead people where he had not seen in his heart first, where people will not be judged by the color of their skin, but the content of their characters. That's something that he said, right? So we need to have a vision. Where do you see people going? Where do you see yourself going? Because you cannot take people where you have not seen or where you've never been, at least in your heart. Last but not least, guys, a servant leader's characteristic trait that I feel is so important to cover is their ability to adapt. If anything, 2020 and 2021 has taught us that we need to be able to adapt to our circumstances, right? So a servant leader has this ability to not just allow what is happening around them, prohibit or stop their ability to lead. They are always thinking of ways forward. How can we? Remember, they don't ask the question, am I going to help? They ask the question, how am I going to help? And this is the same way in their ability to adapt, right? The mission still needs to be fulfilled. The objective still needs to be achieved. And that's the way that the servant leader thinks. All right, guys, a bit of a lengthy video, but I hope you guys get the crux of what is trying to be communicated. I promise you, if you practice the things that we've been talking about in servanthood, you will stand out. you will stand out in your school. You will stand out in any environment that you find yourself, because we have enough leaders that are trying to just do things for themselves. We have enough leaders that it's all about the title. But if you lead from a place of what we've been discussing, I promise you're going to stand out. Always see our bright futures is what we always say in the SBK Leadership Academy. And on that note, we're going to stop. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you apply it, and see you next time.